Hello everyone, welcome to Mastermind. So this is 10th part of our Indian Constitution series, and in this part let us discuss about Article 15. Article 15 is a pretty huge article actually in order to understand for us. So let us start by reading the article as it is from the Constitution itself. So Article 15 speaks about prohibition. So there is proper restriction. And what is this prohibition on? It is on the discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. And all of these are important. All of these are very, very important, because as we progress to understand this article even more, you understand that on the grounds of religion you cannot discriminate, on the grounds of race you cannot discriminate, caste you cannot discriminate, sex you cannot discriminate, a place of birth you cannot discriminate. Other than this you can. That is what it is trying to tell. Okay, so prohibition of discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. So in this there are around 6 subclauses. Let us read each of them. First one, what it is telling. So the first subclause: the state shall not discriminate against any citizen on grounds only of, only of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. So whatever is the article's first line, that itself they are mentioning it in the first clause. We will understand about these in little more detail as and when we progress also. This article is very, very important, because when we were discussing about Article 14, right, when we discussed about Article 14 in the previous part, we saw that Article 14 is available to all the persons. All the persons, that means even if they are citizens of India or if they are citizens of other country, it is applicable to all the persons. But when we are looking at Article 15, it is only to citizens. It is only to citizens. Why it is only to citizens? It is only to citizens because here you can see that there is place of birth also which is mentioned over here. Place of birth also is mentioned over here. And why these are important is we'll understand that in this video itself, as and when we progress in this particular article. But you have to remember that Article 15 is available only to the citizens. That is, it extends only to the citizens. So first clause under Article 15, first clause, it says that the state shall not discriminate. It is telling that the state shall not discriminate against any citizens on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. So here it is mentioning what? The state will not be differentiating. The state will not be discriminating. It is not mentioning about individual. That is the first thing which you have to know. Here they have clearly mentioned that the state will not be discriminating. It is not mentioning that a private individual will not be discriminating. They have not mentioned it like that. But we have to read it more. They have also mentioned that place of birth also, the state cannot discriminate on the basis of place of birth also. Then what if when we are writing any examination, they mention that you have to belong to so and so region itself? Correct? You have to mention about so and so region itself. For example, you can see that it will be very difficult for a person from Karnataka to go and write examination, let's say in other state, or even in Karnataka to claim the reservation in different part. It will be very difficult also. Correct? So they have already mentioned that there is the state should not discriminate. Then how come the state differentiates or discriminates? Because the restrictions are also mentioned over here. Okay, that also you have to remember. Residence itself can be given as a qualification for certain purposes. For example, for an employment which is permitted to certain regions, etc. On the basis of that, there can be discrimination. It is not taken as discrimination, but it is taken as a regulation. That is qualification. It is mentioned as a qualification. So the first one, I hope you have understood. It is mentioning about the state, and it is not mentioning about private individual. What is the second clause saying? No citizen shall on grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. So it is the same sequence. This sequence also is important because this sequence gets added on when you read article 16. Okay, there is dissent also which is there. So if they ask you an examination if dissent is present in article 15, then the answer is no, it is not present, and hence these words are also very important. Religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. Here also religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. Okay, on the basis of these the citizens shall not be discriminated or shall not be subject to any disability, liability, or restriction or condition with regard to if they are wanting to access to shops, public restaurants, hotels, place of public entertainment, place of public entertainment. Next, in the subclause B, it says that if they are wanting to use wells, tanks, bathing huts, roads, and places of public resort maintained wholly or partly out of the state funds or dedicated to the use of general public. Whenever any of these has to be fulfilled on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, the individuals cannot be restricted. The individuals cannot be restricted. You can read it as other than this they can be. That is what they will be mentioning also. That is, no citizen shall on the grounds of only of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them be subjected to any disability, liability, restriction, or condition with regard to these two conditions, A and B. A and B. Hence, we have to understand that here, as it is mentioning about all these places, in this clause, it is mentioning about private individual as well. Here, it is private individuals as well. In the first clause, it was not private individual, it was the state. Here, have they mentioned about the state? No. That means it is applicable to private individual as well. All these constitutions, the fundamental rights actually, they are related to the state's restrictions, that is individuals' right with respect to that of state. But there are a few fundamental rights which is available against the private individual as well. So in that article 15 subclause 2 also is one which is available against a private individual as well. That means if a private individual stops you from accessing the shop on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, at that point of a time you can go to the court against that particular person. Okay, because this is right which is available against the private individual as well. This article is very important, especially clause 2 is very important because it gives the root for article 17 also. Article 17 says about abolition of practice of untouchability. So it gives the root for that as well. So I hope these two clauses of article 15 is very clear. Let us move to the third one. Third one says that about exceptions. About the exception. What it is telling? Nothing in this article shall prevent the state from making any special provisions for women and children. That is, if special provision is made for women, at that point of a time you cannot go to the court saying that on the basis of sex there has been discrimination. No, because the state gets that authority from the constitution itself in order to make special provision for women and children. That is mentioned in article 3. I hope this is clear. So this also mentions about the structural, it mentions about the structural discriminations which is existing in the society, and this is considered as positive discrimination. It is considered as positive discrimination. That is, in order to overcome the structural differences or the structural discrimination which is existing, there can be special treatment which can be provided to women and children as per article 15 subclause 3. And in order to make the special provisions, it is considered as positive discrimination. That is, it lays the root for gender equality as well. gender equality as well. So if they're asking any essay related to women at that point of time, you can use Article 15 subclause 3 also as a means of positive discrimination in order to bring gender equality. Okay, so it lays the foundation for gender equality. So I hope this particular clause is clear. Let us read the fourth one. Nothing in this article or in the clause 2 of the Article 29. What is clause 2 of the Article 29? We'll discuss when we'll go to the Article 29. See here, as we are reading it directly from the Constitution, most of these are interlinked, because one article says one thing, the other article may be telling the similar things, so there should not be conflict, and hence it makes it very clear initially only. So what it is telling, nothing in this article or in the clause 2 of the Article 29 shall prevent the state from making any special provision. Again it is speaking about special provision. And to whom it is? Because we have already seen the special provision for women and children, which is in Article 15 subclause 3. In this case, it is the special provision for socially and educationally backward classes of citizens, or for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. So it is telling that there can be special provisions which can be made for socially and educationally backward classes of citizens or scheduled castes and scheduled tribes for their advancement. So the goal behind this is, the adoption of this clause is to correct the historical wrongs which has been committed against the backward classes. So this clause itself shows that the spirit of resolution of the Constituent Assembly, that is, there has to be proper safeguards which has to be given for minorities, backwards, tribal areas, depressed and other backward classes also. That is, in order to bring social justice. It is about the social justice. It is speaking about the social justice. So we saw that the subclause 3 was related to the special provisions for women and children. Subclause 4 is related to special provisions for advancement of socially and educationally backward classes. So in the examination, if they are giving you economically backward classes at that point of a time related to section 4 of 15, Article 15, subclause 4, in this, if they are mentioning economically backward, then that statement will be wrong, because in this they are not mentioned about economically backward. Okay, so let us look at the fifth clause. Nothing in this article or in the subclause G of clause 1 of Article 19 shall prevent the state from making any special provision by law for the advancement of socially and educationally backward classes of citizens. See, here also they are mentioning about socially and educationally backward. Correct? Here socially and educationally backward. Here also they are mentioning about socially and educationally backward citizens. For the scheduled tribes and scheduled tribes, for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes also. Here also they are mentioning about the same. In so far as such provision relate to their admission to the educational institutions. Here they are mentioning about admission to educational institutions. Admission to educational institutions, including private educational institutions. So they are providing about seats, the reservation of the seats for their advancement. If that private educational institution, whether aided or unaided by the state, other than minority education institutions. So these are referred in Article 30. So Article 19 subclause 1 subclause G we have discussed in previous part. If you remember, write what the article is. If you remember that, write what the article is, but if you don't remember also, it is fine. We'll discuss about that when we'll get to the Article 19. Okay, so here it is mentioning that special provisions can be made for socially and educationally backward class of citizens of SC and ST. Okay, backward classes of citizens of SC and STs. With respect to admission over here, they are mentioning about admission to education institutions. They are properly mentioning about admission to education institutions, even if that education institution is a private education institution, if it is aided or unaided. But what is an exception? If it is a minority education institution, that is exception. Very important. In this case, you cannot claim the reservation as such, because they have that freedom to manage their own education institution as well. Okay, so in this case, other than minority education institution referred in the clause 1 of article 30. I hope till here it is clear. So here two keywords which we have to remember is socially and educationally. Socially and educationally, these are the two words. It is not economy over here, because that is mentioned in subclause 6. Let us read that. Nothing in this article or subclause G of clause 1 of article 19 subclause 1 subclause G of article 20 or clause 2 of article 29 clause 2 shall prevent the state from making. So again it is related to the state. So there are two provisions over here. In this case they are mentioning about economically weaker sections. So in this case they are telling that they can make special provisions for advancement of economically weaker sections of citizens other than 4 and 5. Other than 4 and 5, because we have seen that in 4 and 5 they have mentioned about SCs and STs for their socially and educationally backward classes. They have mentioned it as social and educationally backward. But other than them, if there is economically weaker sections, if the section is economically backward, at that point of a time, for their advancement also the state can make special provisions. It is mentioned under article 15 subclause 6 subclause A. Subclause 6 subclause A. What is subclause B saying? Let us read. Any special provisions for the advancement of economically weaker sections of citizens. Again it is mentioning about economically weaker sections of citizens other than 4 and 5, subclause 4 and 5, which mentions about scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, in so far as special provisions relate to their admission to education institutions. In this case, in subclause 5 they had mentioned about the educational institutions admissions. Educational institutions admissions for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. In this 16 subclause in article 15 subclause 6 subclause B, it is mentioning that the state can make special provisions for advancement of economically weaker sections in case of admission to education institutions. This includes private education institutions also, aided or unaided by the state. See, the words are similar, just the keyword is different. So the similar wordings were used in article 15 also, right? Article 15 subclause 5 also, right? Subclause 4 also. But here they have just replaced the keyword, which is economically weaker section they have mentioned. Other than that, everything else is same over here. Okay, which is admission to education institutions, private education institutions, aided or unaided by the state, other than minority education institutions in article 30. So these all we have read, just that different articles or different sections are mentioning about the advancement of different sections in the society. Sections in the different sections in the society. First we mentioned about women and children, then we mentioned about scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, and admission for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Admission for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Later on we saw about economically weaker sections, then admission for economically weaker section. In both the situation it was private education institutions are also included. Only private education institutions are also included, but minority education institutions are excluded. Okay, which in case of reservation would be in addition to the existing reservation. It doesn't include in the existing reservation, it will be the additional reservation. And what can be the maximum? It can be the 10% of the total seats in each category. Very, very important. Here we might get confused. It is subject to maximum of 10% of the total seat in each category. So I hope you have understood about Article 15. We have read it directly from the Constitution, and each provisions and exceptions also you might have understood. So when we are discussing further parts of Indian Constitution from the articles of the Constitutions itself, we'll discuss more provisions and more important laws as well. I hope you have liked this series of 10 videos at least. If you want us to continue this series, you can let us know in the comment section and we'll make more videos similar to this. Thank you. I'll see you soon in the next one.